Sarah, please read it when you are alone.
After my daughter-in-law passed away in an accident, a letter arrived a week later. The sender was my late daughter-in-law. When I opened it, I found unbelievable events and horrifying plots written inside. I was frozen with fear.
Sarah, run away now.
Furthermore, with the last words of the letter, I realized that the series of events were not yet over. Even if danger befell me, I wouldn't regret it. To clear her regrets, I resolved in my heart to reveal the truth. My name is Sarah, and I'm 55 years old. I have a son named Jason. While he was academically bright, he had a quick temper. During his high school years, he got into trouble, even shoplifting, which was a constant worry for me. My late husband would occasionally scold him, saying,
"Anyone who does wrong must face consequences."
My husband, who instilled such values in our son, passed away 6 years ago. Jason, now in his 30s, has settled down. He married Nancy, 5 years younger than him, and they set up a new home just an hour's drive away from us. Nancy, his wife, is gentle and sincere, and we quickly became close. I learned that Nancy's parents had also passed away.
I will take good care of you from now on, Sarah.
Well, that's heartwarming. If you ever need anything, don't hesitate to ask. I was determined to support Nancy, filling the void left by her late mother. And time flew by, until 2 years had passed since my son and his wife got married. Suddenly, in the middle of the night, I received a call from my son.
Nancy has been in an accident, and she's not breathing.
What happened? I immediately inquired about the situation, but Jason, who was home alone, didn't know what had happened since he wasn't with his wife. Hoping it was some misunderstanding, I rushed to the hospital where Nancy was taken. There, I found my son slumped weakly in a chair, unable to look at me.
How did this happen?
He muttered, covering his face, still not facing me. The police were at the hospital, and they explained that Nancy had fallen into the sea while in the car. By the time they retrieved her from the water, she had already passed away. Despite being rushed to the hospital, it was too late. What a coincidence. But this story seems eerily familiar. As I listened closely to the details of the accident, I couldn't shake the feeling of resemblance to the accident that took my husband's life. You see, my husband also left in the middle of the night, saying,
"I'm going out shopping."
Only to later be found having fallen into a river, meeting his demise. Moreover, when he was discovered, the window of his car was slightly open, just like in this case. Furthermore, there was a bruise on his side, not from the accident but from something else, and the exact same bruise appeared on my husband's side. When questioned by the police, my son finally looked up and began explaining that his wife had stumbled inside the house, hitting the shelf. At that moment, I couldn't help but notice Jason blinking excessively, which struck me as rather peculiar. Can such coincidences really happen? It's as if our house is haunted by some curse. I couldn't help but feel like a terrifying monster had taken Nancy and my husband to the afterlife. Feeling incredibly uneasy, as I wallowed in despair, Jason suddenly stood up. When I looked at my son's face, it had transformed from earlier, now resolute and determined.
There's no use moping around. We need to start preparing for the funeral right away.
He patted my shoulder and swiftly began making arrangements. At that moment, I felt reassured by Jason's ability to handle difficult situations with composure. I need to pull myself together too. I want to ensure Nancy's peaceful journey. With no family for Nancy, we opted for a small family funeral, so there were hardly any mourners on the day. As I quietly scanned the venue, I noticed Jason looking at Nancy's portrait, his lips curling into a sly smile. It was a fleeting moment, so I might have misinterpreted it. However, I couldn't shake the image of my son's face from my mind, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. A week after the funeral, one of Nancy's friends visited my house. When I mentioned that the memorial portrait and other belongings were at my son's house, the friend handed me a letter enclosed in a white envelope.
Nancy asked me to deliver this to you in case anything happened to her.
Furthermore, Nancy had spoken happily about how well I treated her. The person who brought the letter said it seemed a note of gratitude to me. After expressing my gratitude and seeing off the woman, I sat on the living room sofa with the letter in hand. Looking at the back of the envelope, there was a note with Nancy's name saying,
"Please read this alone."
With a sense of dread, I opened the envelope with trembling hands and read the letter. It began with,
"Jason might be getting rid of his family for insurance money."
which shocked me to the core. As I continued reading, it revealed that 6 years ago, my husband's accident was orchestrated by our son. Furthermore, Nancy warned,
"Now I might be the next target. If you receive this letter and I'm already gone, you might be in danger next. Please, run away immediately."
Unbelievable as it seemed, these words were written on the page. Nancy, who had no one else, entrusted me with this letter out of a desperate desire for help. Seeing the evidence enclosed, I couldn't help but let out a surprised, "What? This is unbelievable." In the midst of my trembling anger, I couldn't shake off my husband's words echoing in my head.
Anyone who does wrong must face the consequences.
With that in mind, I immediately left the house with the evidence Nancy had given me to rush to the police. However, upon arriving at the police station, I felt that the letter and evidence alone might not be enough. If Nancy's assumptions were wrong, it could be disastrous. So, I reconsidered and decided to gather evidence diligently on my own. I went to my son's house, used the spare key Nancy had provided, pretended to clean while thoroughly inspecting every corner. Suddenly, I became curious about the closet. Upon opening it, I was met with an unbelievable sight. Could this be true? I couldn't believe it. Amidst shock and confusion, I composed myself and installed hidden cameras to monitor my son's actions. However, for a while, there were no particularly suspicious behaviors. Nevertheless, I meticulously reviewed the camera footage as long as time allowed. Half a year later, just as I began to think that nothing would happen, seeing my child's image on the screen made me rise from the sofa where I had been sitting. The dwindling flame of anger reignited stronger than ever, and I felt a surge of determination to vindicate my husband and daughter-in-law. I absolutely had to uncover the truth with my own hands. Anticipating a call from my son, I waited, and as expected, the call came.
"Mom, I'm cooking dinner. Come over this weekend and join me."
Hearing his unusually cheerful voice, a chill ran down my spine. While inwardly acknowledging that the long-awaited day had finally arrived, I replied, trying not to reveal my suspicions. "Of course, I'll come. Thank you." With a heavy bag in hand, I visited Jason's house over the weekend. My son, who had been waiting for dinner, looked puzzled when he saw what I was holding. "Sorry, I made a mistake at work and accidentally ordered a ton of fried chicken. So, I ended up buying a lot. Let's eat it together." Ignoring my son's displeased expression, I quickly entered the house and lined up a bunch of fried chicken on the living room table. "Can you pack the meal you made into Tupperware, Jason? I'll take it home." As soon as I finished speaking, I started munching on the chicken, completely ignoring Jason's cooking. Not touching my son's homemade dish and wasting his kindness, Jason displayed an irritated expression, then stormed off to the kitchen with heavy footsteps. After a while, my son placed a teacup filled with green tea in front of me.
"Here, try this. It's a bit bitter though."
"Oh, sorry. I'm really into rooibos tea right now. It's caffeine-free and good for me." When I showed him my water bottle, my son made a loud sigh, as if he had run out of patience. As I apologized repeatedly, my son reluctantly began to eat the fried chicken. By the time he finished eating, Jason went to the kitchen, and after a while,
"My goodness, please eat the dessert."
Saying so, my son placed homemade cookies on the table and banged the table with both hands. "Of course. I'll have some." Smiling, as I picked up the last homemade dessert cookie, my son started to look satisfied.
"Is it good?"
"Yes, it's delicious." And then, perhaps because I was full, I fell asleep soundly on the sofa as soon as I said, "Thank you for the meal." After a while, I found myself being placed in the passenger seat of my car. Driving was, of course, Jason. When he parked in a place where the sound of waves could be heard, My son forcibly pushed me over and moved me to the driver's seat. Furthermore, Jason started the car engine and placed my foot on the accelerator. That's it. Stop right there.
Huh?
I may have seemed asleep, but I've been awake the whole time. I sat up abruptly, stared at my son, then immediately turned off the car engine. This is how you drowned my husband and Nancy in the sea. My son was shocked by my words, his eyes widening.
What are you talking about? We just went for a drive.
Don't play dumb. Then why did you forcibly move me to the driver's seat? As I glared at my clearly flustered son, he either couldn't come up with an excuse or chose not to respond, just mumbling to himself. Nancy told me something interesting. Apparently, you don't even rush to work when you oversleep. And for someone in sales, you sure seem to lack something, don't you?
Huh? She said that?
Yes, she did. And there's more where that came from, so you better listen up. I conveyed to him I already knew that Jason had been wandering around without going to work, and that my husband's bank account, which had his father's inheritance, was already empty. After much deliberation, she decided to confront Jason, but as soon as he returned home, Jason went straight to his room and started making a phone call. Sensing something was amiss, Nancy eavesdropped and heard Jason say,
Don't worry. I'm about to receive a large sum of money soon. Just like before. I'll support you.
And then ended the call. Just then, Nancy found her life insurance policy document, which she had no recollection of, with a substantial payout of $100,000, naming Jason as the beneficiary. Around the same time, it was discovered that Jason had been importing sleeping pills from overseas. Nancy sensed that you might be targeting her life. But it's not just that. She was also distressed, thinking you might have sent your father to his grave for inheritance purposes.
But that's just her speculation.
After eating the cookies you made, you were watching me with satisfaction as I fell asleep as if it was a great success. Isn't that the best evidence?
I just thought you liked them.
Then let's take the cookies to the police and have them examined. When I took out the cookies from my bag, he stammered, turning pale. In fact, I pretended to eat them, immediately went to the toilet to throw up, and kept the evidence in a bag for safekeeping. That's not all. I took out the contract for my life insurance policy in my name and thrust it in front of my son. I don't remember ever signing up for this life insurance. And what's more, just like Nancy, you're the one set to receive a hefty sum of $10,000. Such a wonderful arrangement, isn't it? As I said this sarcastically, Jason looked flustered, his eyes darting around.
Maybe you just forgot that you signed up for it, Mom?
I was truly appalled by my son's continued evasion, and as I shot him a stern look, I showed Jason the letter Nancy had written me before her passing. Watching him tremble as he scanned the words, I revealed. Right after this letter arrived, I had hidden cameras installed in your house to verify the truth. It also recorded you putting sleeping pills in the cookies. I showed Jason the footage on my phone. His delighted expression as he hummed while mixing the cookies seemed devilish, likely thrilled at the prospect of soon obtaining a large sum of money. Putting someone to sleep like that. Do you find joy in taking people's lives? Feeling a mix of sadness and frustration, I involuntarily choked up. But instead of showing any remorse, my son quickly reverted to his usual demeanor.
I accidentally mixed up the sleeping pills Nancy had from the hospital with sugar. Plus, there's no evidence linking me to what happened to you and Nancy, right?
Excuse me? He seemed rather confident, almost as if he had successfully dodged any suspicion, with a smirk playing on his lips.
All we did today was go for a drive, right? Nancy just misunderstood and wrote that letter. And Mom just forgot about the insurance policy. I don't think the police will take any action based on this.
Placing his hand on his hip and tilting his head back, Jason laughed triumphantly. You think you can get away with anything as long as there's no evidence? My anger surged at Jason's cowardly attitude. But I hadn't walked into this situation unprepared either. There are hidden cameras installed in this car too. They captured the moment you forcibly pushed me from the passenger seat to the driver's seat. I revealed. My son tilted his head, almost mocking me.
So what?
The autopsy results of your father and Nancy mentioned a strange bruise on the side, not consistent with the accident. It was caused by you forcibly moving them to the driver's seat, rubbing against the side brake. I explained, lifting my jacket to reveal the freshly reddened area. To my surprise, Jason had inadvertently demonstrated how to create such a bruise using me as a prop in front of the hidden camera. We'll have the shape of the bruise and the side brake verified with the camera footage. With other evidence combined, there's no way you can escape now. When I showed him the image of the history of my son purchasing sleeping pills online, enclosed with Nancy's letter, he tightened his grip and his lips trembled. Jason's nothing but a liar. You wanted money because you got hooked on a DJ and were burning through cash, right? After saying that, I showed him pictures of Jason going to the club to meet the DJ and taking countless photos together. Furthermore, I confronted him with photos I took when I opened my son's closet. It must have been what Jason meant when he told the person on the phone, "I'll support you." Surprisingly, there were 500 photos taken with the DJ. And Jason bought 100 of the same CD for $30 each, along with $28 trillion shirts and heaps of costumes for fans worth hundreds of dollars. Nancy couldn't find where Jason had put all the merchandise he bought. Surely, he hid them somewhere and brought them home after his wife passed away, leaving his son with them. Despite growing suspicion and no decisive evidence, Nancy suffered considerably, overwhelmed by her anguish. In case of emergency, she wrote a letter entrusting a friend, saying,
"I just want my mother-in-law to be safe.
You're such a heartless person for using sleeping pills to drown your family in the sea. Thanks to my daughter-in-law's letter, I survived. But neither my husband nor Nancy returned to this world. Only an indescribable emptiness swirled within me. I wanted to believe Nancy had just misunderstood. But you acted exactly as she imagined." Jason realized he couldn't talk his way out of this one and turned pale. Jason exclaimed,
"Even if you're a parent, you have no right to snoop around someone else's house."
"You're the one who took away our family's lives and now you're talking nonsense. This DJ is going to marry a handsome actor. You're just a cash cow." I showed my son today's online news. He was so desperate to delete me that he didn't even notice the news.
"No way. She said she wanted to share eternal dreams with me."
Save that talk for bedtime. The one who will always be there for you is not the DJ, but your family. My son realized everything had ended in failure and burst into tears on the spot.
"I did so much for her. I've been betrayed."
"You're the only one who betrayed the family."
"Mom, please, I'll change and work a little. Just forgive me."
Jason clung to me, crying like a baby. Such rotten determination to work a little after sacrificing so many people. The feelings entrusted to me by Nancy and the words left by my husband came back strongly. Always thinking about yourself. Anyone who does wrong must face consequences. I pushed my son away and called the police on the spot. Despite repeatedly bowing his head to me until the police arrived, Jason begged,
"Mom, please, let's settle this peacefully."
But I had no iota of intention to forgive him. When my son, whom thought had become irredeemable, attacked me, he was subdued by the arriving police officers and taken away. No matter how much he screamed, he himself had pushed away the family who would have helped him. In front of me, all that remained was the red-tinted sea illuminated by the police car's lights, quietly rippling. I will never forgive him. After that, my son was arrested and is now facing trial. The lawyer said,
"He might never come out again."
I visit my husband's and daughter-in-law's graves every day and it has become a routine to update them on Jason's situation. After visiting the graves, I go to theater rehearsals. Actually, a friend in the theater group taught me how to pretend to sleep, and I was praised for being convincing and even joined the group. Surprisingly, I'll be the cast as the lead role in the next performance. I realized my own talent in an unexpected way. Instead of dwelling on it, I will move forward with a positive attitude towards life.